Listen to the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. First item on tonight's agenda is the approval of the May 25th regular council meeting minutes. Anybody got any questions, changes, corrections? Or not, those minutes will stand as approved. Next is the report of the town manager, Mr. Warren.
Mayor Black, members of council, just very briefly, I want to thank the community for showing up and supporting the graduates of all three high schools for the parade event that we had. I will tell you that internally we learned quite a bit about that, and staff is going to get together and probably publish some guidance to the schools and the parents so that we can have a smoother event next time if this is going to be a more institutionalized thing. But generally speaking, we just appreciate the good sentiment and the way the community's really come together. And on an administrative note, just want to remind everyone that next Friday, the 18th, is a state holiday and town offices will be closed. And that concludes my report.
All right, any appearances before council? All right, council comments. CJ, to start.
I was going to, just on Bart, I want to make sure, as far as what we addressed at the last meeting on the procurement tweaks, if we could get that to the next council meeting.
Yes, we hope to do that.
But yeah, that's it.
Stacy.
I just want to say, wish Councilman Rush a speedy recovery.
Bruce.
Okay, start off by wishing Councilman Rush a speedy recovery. Also want to thank all our police officers, firefighters for what they do. I also want to thank everybody in the military, our Bedford boys, those that fought and gave their ultimate sacrifice on D-Day, and those that were able to make it home. Thank you for what you did for us. Thank you for preserving our freedom.
I don't have anything to see. So next we've got our report of council committees. Bruce, if you want to get, we had the property committee meeting.
Earlier today we had a property committee meeting. We went over a possible concept plan for the other part of Liberty Lake Park. Nothing is final yet. Right now we're just coming up with ideas, kind of bouncing some ideas around. Saw what Her and Profit said we could potentially do, and nothing is final yet. And we're going to work on getting input from the community to find out, hey, is the community going to support this project before we even look at moving forward with it?
All right, anybody got any revisions to the agenda? Next is the appointment of a member to the planning commission.
Members of council, there is a vacancy on the planning commission currently with an unexpired term of March 31st, 2025. Mr. Brock Malcolm has expressed an interest in appointment to fill that unexpired term, and with your packet is his application to serve. Tonight, you are requested to appoint Mr. Brock Malcolm to serve on the planning commission with the term to expire March 31, 2025.
I make a motion that we appoint Mr. Brock Malcolm to serve on the Planning Commission, said term to expire March 31st, 2025.
We have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mr. Hartwick?
Aye.
Mr. Johannesson?
Aye.
Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
Aye.
Mayor Black?
Aye.
Motion passes with 6 ayes.
All right, the next item is the discussion of the Forks intersection improvements. I know we've got Todd and John here from the VDOT. So Bart, do you want to start and then we'll ask them?
Sure. The background of this particular item, and I mentioned specifically the Forks intersection improvements, but I know that Mr. Daniel and Mr. Morris probably have other information about general funding and administrative processes they'll also share with you. But as you know, back in a year or so ago, we did an in-depth study in cooperation with VDOT and the Central Virginia Planning Commission and their consultant Clark Nexon that generated a variety of recommendations related to improving the flow of traffic in the intersection that we refer to as the Forks, which is Longwood Avenue Extension, Forest Road, Independence, and of course 122 as it goes northward. One of the options was the construction of a roundabout. Also, there were several other items, including construction of a turn lane in the existing geometry. What's been brought to our attention is if we have an interest in pursuing the roundabout as a major project, it would be possible for us to transmit that desire to VDOT, and they may be able to get it into their long-term 6-year plan. And that is kind of the question before you tonight, although I know we're still catching you a little bit cold, so even if you have an interest in pursuing that and gave that direction, there's still no obligation, and there's still no guarantee that it would actually make it into the plan. But this is kind of a very preliminary step, I guess, an appropriate way to term it, in pursuing that if you're interested. And I've reached the limit of my intelligence on this, I'm going to shut up now.
Thank you, Mayor and council members.
Excuse me, could you give me the name,
I'm
please?
sorry, Todd Daniel with VDOT,
Okay.
Bedford Residency.
Daniels with the S?
No S.
No S,
No
thank
S.
you.
I'm the residency administrator for the Bedford Residency.
Okay.
As Mr. Warner talked about, there are various ways to get projects into our 6-year plan. I smiled when he said long-term 6-year plan. That's not exactly what we want. And I'll hit on that just a little bit in what I brought to you tonight, and I don't intend to be very long-winded, but I want to give you a little history and a little feedback on how do you get there if that's what the town desires and the council ultimately desires. But one funding avenue is what we call Smart Scale. You may have heard of that, you may not. But going back into 2013, our General Assembly, governor at the time, they were looking for how do we get away from the long-term 6-year plan. For example, going back into a few decades ago and further, it could have been I'll use the word pet project for someone. It could have been a politically motivated project. It could have been any reason that a project got added to our 6-year plan. That project could have been on a highway like 122. It could have been on Interstate 81. It could have been on a secondary road somewhere. The problem is the 6-year plan was a long-term plan. Projects didn't get built in 6 years. It could have been a feel-good effort to put a project in a plan, put a very limited amount of dollars on it, and that project sat there, and it sat there, and it sat there. Some, and this is not an exaggeration, for a decade or more, didn't get built. The funding priority just wasn't there. There wasn't enough money to ever get down to that point to continue the funding. So as part of the effort with what started with House Bill 2313 and then various other bills that got through the General Assembly, how do we build a 6-year plan that will put the right project in it at the right time, at the right place? How do we get it funded? How do we get it built in 6 years? An example is at 460 S curves. That's a Smart Scale project. It will be built within the 6 years of the 6-year plan when it was made part of the plan. So this all started back, like I say, in 2013, and it moved forward 2014 and 2016, and various House bills and other bills were signed and went into effect. And we got to what today is Smart Scale. And that is, here's what it stands for. VDOT is full of acronyms. We are government. System management and allocation of resources for transportation, safety, congestion, accessibility, land use, economic development, and environment. A lot of words, but Smart Scale is the key. So like I talked about prior to Smart Scale, we really didn't have a great 6-year plan that happened in 6 years. So we developed Smart Scale. It was an annual process at the beginning. Then we went to a biannual process, which is where we are now, a biannual process. And so in the even years, you make an application. Locality like the town of Bedford, County of Bedford, Bedford County, could be an MPO, Central Virginia Planning District Commission. Any of those entities can make an application. We, VDOT, cannot make an application. So I don't have the authority My district engineer doesn't. We cannot insert or create a project in the 6-year plan. So that is an act that, if the council so chose, actually requires a resolution, a document passed by council to support the project. And ultimately, town staff works with us, our staff, our district planning staff, and this will be a penny project, and we will just refine it, make sure that it meets certain criteria. The application is as strong as it can be. We'll provide crash data, a lot of data. We are data rich, and that's one thing we do a good job of providing to the localities. Outside of Smart Scale, there are other ways to get projects funded, get them in a plan, and the town has been pretty successful in using these in the past. We work with Wayne Hale quite often, in fact. But the State of Good Repair, which is the McGee Street Bridge, I think is going to fall under State of Good Repair. Some HSIP, which is Highway Safety Improvement. The town and our localities don't apply for that money directly, but we do improvements using some of those monies. An example, at Liberty High School, we put the signs and the flashing beacons where Centerville, Fancy Farm, and 122 come together. A few years ago, that was HSIP money. We've got revenue sharing, which the town has used before for projects. We call it TA, Transportation Alternatives, and you can use that for sidewalk and different things. And I think the town has used some of that before too. There are many, many programs. Now, the ones that I just talked about, besides Smart Scale, they require locality participation. Revenue sharing is a 50-50 split, 50% state, 50% locality generally. I think the TAP, the TA program is an 80-20. Revenue sharing is all state funds. TA, there's federal funds in that, and that really doesn't matter tonight. But just the main thing is there are several funding streams for a larger project. Smart Scale is probably your best avenue. Basically, when you get into Smart Scale and you make an application, we've got 2 funding streams inside Smart Scale. We've got district grant monies, which we've got 9 construction districts across the state. We're part of Salem District. And we get a certain amount of money for each round of Smart Scale that can only be divided up to localities within Salem District. And we've got 12 counties and a number of towns like yourself. We cover Bedford and Franklin County. So in addition to those 2 counties, we work with the town of Bedford and the town of Rocky Mount. So any of those 4 can apply for a project. They can get district grant funds, and that money stays in the district and cannot be applied to a project outside, for example, in Lynchburg District in Campbell County. And then there are high priority funds or statewide funds. Those funds can go to projects anywhere in the state. Now, the town itself cannot apply for those funds, but someone like the Central Virginia Planning District Commission, formerly Region 2000, they could apply for a project and they could draw money from those funds if it's a successful project. Once again, I'll go back to the biennial. So even years, you make an application. Odd years, this year, our CTB will adopt our 6-year plan that includes the most recent draft of Smart Scale projects. So that'll happen this month, in fact, at their meeting. And then we'll start it all over again. We'll be in our next round. Town staff would take projects of priority and possibly like I said, submit an application after we go through a lot of discussions and work with the town to refine the application. There's some targeted deadlines or windows in there. For example, there's a pre-app that has to be done if you anticipate an application, and town staff would do that. And then at the point of application, which is around, let me see here, which is about August 1, and that could change a little, but right now it's August 1. That's when town council would need to be ready to pass a resolution of support of the project, because that is actually part of the application, a required part of the application to see it move forward and ultimately get scored and potentially be made part of the 6-year plan. One last thing, I wanted to mention is, so it's a scoring process, and the reason for that is to make it more transparent and more fair, if you will. So we will get points for, and I say we because I live in the county and play in the town and what have you. And I'll take this opportunity. It's been a while. I don't come to this building as often as I used to, but when I was about this tall, I came in here all the time. My mother was Commissioner of Revenue for many years, and prior to that, the Deputy Commissioner. So I spent a lot of time in this building. So it's, you know, it matters to me. So what we'll submit a project, it'll get scored, and it's relative to the competition. So what scores great in one round could score less or be a lesser of a competitor in a future round. You don't know that. We don't know that. Once again, it's all about how many projects are submitted, how many applications are submitted, what those applications or projects score, and part of that score is the cost of projects. So as an example, ultimately the cost-benefit ratio is what matters. And then you start to rank them. So the highest cost-benefit ratio is going to be project 1. And you've got X amount of dollars. And that project costs a given amount. So you apply those dollars and you just work your way down the list until you run out of money. Those district grant funds that I was talking about, that's literally as simple as it is. The scoring is more complicated. There are various aspects of the score or factors that play into the score. I won't go into all those details tonight, but the point is that it is relative. It's not like if you score 70 or above, you're in the plan. It's not like that at all. Your competition of the given year does matter. So with that, Mayor, Mr. Warner, I don't know if that's enough info to totally confuse you. I didn't speak directly to the Independence Longwood Forest Road intersection. I can offer some feedback if you like. I can answer questions however you want to handle it. I'm here to, it's your pleasure.
I'll ask about the roundabout. I mean, I don't know. I mean, what brought this about that would be a good idea?
So, Councilman Showman, so what I understand, the town was looking for feedback from, as Mr. Warner talked about, Clark Nexon, and they did a study, a planning study, which we do all the time. We've got them all over our counties, for the 460 corridor and different things. And we, VDOT, definitely promote innovative intersections. For example, I'll go back in time 20 years. Well, when the Lowe's came to Bedford, we put a signal up at 777 Charlotte Church Road on 460. Part of that was because, and I wasn't in my position then, but what I'll use this as an example situation. You could have a commercial developer come to a property adjacent to 460, and there's property in the town limits that is developable property. They could demand a signal light. I want a signal at my connection to get out to 460. 20 years ago, our district engineer he or she could make that decision and approve that. The developer likely would have to pay for it, but a signal would go in. Well, what we saw, as an example, is US 29 going through Charlottesville and north of Charlottesville. There was just a proliferation of signal lights, and I'm sure most of you, or many of you, have driven through there. And if you're not stopping in Charlottesville, it can be a little bit of a hassle. It slows you down. You have to account for that time. It creates significant congestion. Signal lights alone are not always the answer. They are the answer to many citizens that come to an intersection and they have trouble. The first thing is, hey, we need a signal. However, they come with their own set of problems, such as ringing crashes and whatever. They're not the silver bullet. So, to reduce congestion, to improve efficiency, to improve safety, innovative intersections come about, such as a roundabout. And there's tons of statistics out there. There's some federal studies. There's some VDOT guidance on roundabouts that you could go on the internet to our webpage and others if you want to research them. How did it come about in the town of Bedford at that intersection? I don't want to speak for the town, but I think it was just a product of, hey, let's look at this intersection. Tell me what will work to improve it, because there is an obvious lack of a right turn going northbound on 221. And being the transportation planners that they are, that is one of the tools in the toolbox, and it's got data behind it, and I think the study reflects that. It improves your level of service. We look at level of service for intersections, for our roadways, and it also looks to the future. So what's happening today is, we see it all, right? What's going to happen in 2045 or further? And that's part of what the planners are tasked with, is taking today's road, projecting. It's a planning level study. Nobody's got a crystal ball, but that's part of what they're doing too, is projecting a potential increase in traffic, and how does that affect the current intersection? What does that do to your level of service, your time, your amount of delay, your peak hour delay? There's all sorts of factors that we look at for intersections. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
You know, I would say that's probably the biggest intersection in the town as far as the busiest. You got school traffic, tractor trailers going to and from Big Island, coming up 221. So, okay, I guess NDOT is promoting the roundabout, but where does the right turn lane come into play? Do you all not promote that? Or?
So I wouldn't say that we are definitely promoting the roundabout. Yeah, we are. I'm choosing my words here wisely. So we as an agency believe in innovative intersections. Is that right for every intersection? I will not tell you that. I don't want the council to think that's what I'm conveying to you. So the right turn lane is an alternative.
Right.
Now what the right turn lane does compared to what the roundabout does as far as level of efficiency or congestion mitigation for the intersection, I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. They are in that study that Clark Nexon produced. So I would, not to kind of not give you an answer,
Yeah.
but the right turn lane, I mean, is I don't think anybody would say it's not a benefit, because, you know, I drive through there often, and, you know, it's not there.
Well, I mean, I've seen some places where they're good. Fifth Street, Lynchburg, up Ward's Road behind Sam's Club. They work great in certain places, but right there, I just am concerned that, number one, they are confusing. I mean, people at times don't know when to stop and when to go. Even though you learn after a while, but I just think it would be very confusing. And you get the early morning bus traffic going through there and coming out. I mean, I'm just not sure, from my perspective, that's the right place for one, but hey, I'm just one vote.
Well, I don't want to, so I definitely don't want to sway council. You know, I did promote, I'll go back to that, where I'll use it. You know, yeah, we do. We like innovative intersections in the right place, because primarily what we look at is safety. There's a congestion factor, but honestly, if we look around us, and I talked about Charlottesville, or heaven forbid we go to Northern Virginia, they got congestion. We don't have congestion, right? But we do have delay, so they'll back up, and I'm going to throw a number, 10 cars wait to go through the intersection. And you're right, when school's letting come, time to go to school, and school's letting out, and thank goodness we're going to be back in school, and it does, it picks up, it's busy. My kids went to Liberty High School, I still got one going to Liberty High School. So it does, and that roundabout, if you look at it no other way, it's just, what benefit do we get out of the roundabout versus how is our community going to receive it, right? Can it be confusing? Absolutely. You think about what you've got there, so you've got commercial entrances with, the forks, whatever that, there, and you got Advance, and you got Big Orange. You got Valley View Drive. It's kind of a weird thing right now, because trying to tie all that together back when Independence was built, I guess in the 90s. If I remember correctly, we built that in 3 stages. But, that all gets tied together right there. If everybody used it like it was designed to be used, it would flow magnificent. But your point is right. It does take time to learn them. I will say that the roundabout at Sam's, there across from the Chick-fil-A and all that stuff, right, that's a mini roundabout. So don't compare that to what you might see.
I think that was well needed there. I mean, it was hard to get out from Target and from Sam's at times. That was.
It reduced your delay. Now, I have seen people stop. I've seen people stop in the roundabout as I'm approaching it, which is totally wrong, because they don't know how to use it. But I take you up to exit 150 and travel. And many of you probably traveled through there before we redid the interchange and what have you, and it flows pretty smooth. And we built Gateway Boulevard that comes around and connects now. That's a hybrid type roundabout. It's got 2 lanes on one side and 1 lane on the other, and many trucks use it. And you mentioned the trucks going to Big Island. That's a big deal. You got to think about that. That roundabout functions pretty good. There are people today, and it's signed. We put up all kinds of signs. People still don't understand it sometimes because they don't know exactly which lane to get into on that 2-lane side when it's a double lane. You know, this potential roundabout is obviously a planted level. I don't know that it would be that complicated, but you could have, we call it like a slip ramp. So for example, the roundabout could, and you have it today, it could give you a dedicated right turn from Forest Road. If you headed to Longwood, headed into town, you get a dedicated right turn, but you may have to yield for somebody coming out of the roundabout. Way too early to talk about that, but just to your point about understanding how to navigate it is very important. It's very important. I've seen some work well. You know, we don't have a lot. We've got 2 in Bedford County. If you didn't know that right now, we've got 1 in New London Business Park and 1 in Fallen Creek Park. We are building one, right? We just started construction this is Franklin County, 122 and Hardy Road. So just the other side of Westlake, we're building a roundabout on 122. Now that's a 3-legged intersection, but what we had there, what we saw, and why the county, why we got to where we did, we had several crashes and some severe crashes. 55-mile-an-hour roadway, you've got a T intersection, cars would pull out inadvertently in front of somebody and they would get hit T-bone. And that's usually your most severe type crash. Roundabouts serve to reduce that drastically because you don't pull out T-bone 90 degrees. There were some fatalities. The county actually started looking at turn lanes, and we were working with them. And then we started talking about a signal light there. And it slowly evolved to where we are today. The roundabout, the plan got completed, approved, and we've broken ground to build that roundabout on primary road. So, yeah, so I think it's going to be a good one, but it's going to be new to all of us. So.
I got you.
Couple of questions. You might be able to answer this question a few minutes ago, but I want you to clarify.
Yes.
So the roundabout, well, that's, other than the need in the town to approve it, it's pretty much be funded completely by VDOT, correct?
If you apply for it through the Smart Scale program, yes, it will be 100% funded by the state. It would not require town funds. The town's cost, I guess you could say, would be part of staff time developing the application. I don't know, there may be some potential consultant development or consultant help with that. I won't speak to that. But construction cost, right-of-way cost, preliminary engineering cost, once it gets approved, if it gets approved, would be funded through the program.
Second question would be, you know, you have 4 businesses right there, actually 5 businesses. You have 2 right on the corner of Independence right there. You have 1 across the street, and then you have 1 on the far end, and you have like a vacant lot, vacant business or whatever. How would they come into play into this roundabout?
Well, I probably can't speak specifically about how the entrance would tie in because it all depends on how far you are from the intersection. Where would the roundabout actually be? And that's important too. For example, the roundabout 122 and Hardy Road, that's not going where the intersection is today. It's going a little bit southwest of the intersection. There was a vacant agricultural type parcel there, 3-legged intersection, remember, makes it easier. We can build a lot of that out of traffic. And as you enter a roundabout, you don't, if you think about the one at Sam's, even though it's small, you still have to turn to come into it. That's ideal. So this roundabout, I think the Clark Nexon planning sketch shows, and going in that area where the town's got some right of way. I think we've got some monitoring wells and other things in that little spot there that hopefully will get closed up here before too long. But you know, that roundabout could shift towards Valley View potentially. Well, then you angle as you come into it. How does Advance, how does Big Orange, how do they tie into it? I don't know. Be a big part of the plan. I would suggest that they would be a huge part of the public involvement process, trying to figure that out, because the last thing that I want, absolutely the last thing I think the town, Mr. Warner wants, is come up with a plan, and then you've got a lot of negative or pushback from your town businesses. So it kind of circumventing your question a little bit, but I don't know exactly how they would tie into it.
Well, I didn't want you to give me but I just want to see where that would come into.
It would be critical to tie all that together. And even you look at, I don't think, but Scott's would be too much of a problem. It's a little bit away, but still, I mean, you think of Scott's entrance and what is it called, Broadway, that shoots across that little short piece of Valley View. You know, all that would get reworked. How's it all get reworked? Some planning level sketches, but it's a lot of design. There's been no real survey and design to my knowledge.
So, last question, the roundabout, like the one in Sam's, because that one's kind of open, so if someone does miss the roundabout, they can kind of run across gravel or whatever. This one's going to be more have more signs in the middle. It's going to be more open in the middle where people, if they do make a mistake and they don't understand the roundabout and actually run through it, will it be unsafe for them?
So that still depends on design. It's an interesting question though, and you know, roundabouts offer aesthetics. So they offer safety when you've prioritized it, you've got safety and congestion mitigation. And then probably the lowest priority of a roundabout is aesthetics. Because you think about Sam's, it's got a small inner circle.
Yep.
This one will have a much larger inner circle. I don't know the exact diameter, but there's tables for all that. But what you've got is an opportunity. So some people will use a roundabout or some localities, maybe use it as a gateway. Now, is that the right place for a gateway? I don't know. That's a town decision. But there are ways that we can, well, if it's in town, we wouldn't have to worry about it. If we were in a county, we would work with the county to, I'll use the word adopt, that's the wrong word. We basically permit them to do some low-lying vegetation potentially in the center circle because it's a town, it's in the town, it'd be a town roundabout. I mean, that would be up to you all. There'd be still some restrictions on an arterial roadway because 122 being Independence and Longwood Extension, and then Forest Road and Longwood is 221. They're arterial streets, and we still inspect the arterial streets, and because we give the town maintenance payments for arterials and local streets annually. But it would not look like, so I would not say that you'd be able to just drive right through the middle of it. Would there be signs? Absolutely. Many signs in the interior circle, and as you approach it, directing you how to go and giving you some schematics, if you will, of, okay, if you're going straight through, here's what you do.
See, the signs behind Sam's and Barnes and Nobles right there, the signs is on the side. I don't think they're in the middle.
They're not, because that actually is a very low center, and it's a mini roundabout. That's a concrete center, I think I would say it is. And I've never seen it, but I've heard people tell us somebody's driving right through.
Yep, and the one in Troutville has the signs kind of in the middle or whatever.
It's a much larger roundabout. Yeah, good point. So JP mentioned that's something being closer to our area, Oddfellows Road. So we just finished 2 of those with that new expansion, the new bridge there, 460, the connection over to Oddfellows.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, a few things is, you already answered my question about VDOT paying for it, because the way a lot of our citizens see it is roundabouts are expensive, they're also inconvenient, and another thing is if somebody was to have an accident on the roundabout and someone had to go somewhere, would there be a way for them to get around it so they could get to where they needed to if it was an emergency? And can we just do a right turn lane instead?
So I'll answer your last question first. Can you do a right turn lane? That's town decision. You know, what you propose, what you would desire to do on your network. Like I said, there are restrictions. It's an arterial roadway, but yeah, that's a town decision. If there's a crash, can you get through? I would say that depends, and honestly, that depends on every road we travel. No different from 460. If we've had crashes that unfortunately have closed 460, and depending on the extent of severity and what type of response, emergency response is required, we've shut down both directions of 460 before. So I will say that the roundabout of this size would likely. You would have a travel area, so that we're going to drive our car through this paved area. You're going to have a truck apron that will probably be up, and these are estimates, don't quote these numbers, maybe 4 inches. And the purpose in that is for the trailers, so you've got tractor trailers going to Big Island, you know, those trailers will track up on that apron that's designed for that. It's called a truck apron. And then you've got your inner circle that has your signs and your whatever type of aesthetics you may want to put in it. So that's kind of the design. So if there was a single car accident, which is very unlikely because it's very low speed, or somebody pulls out and somebody strikes them, there is still potential to have room to get through there. But if you crashed at the intersection today, you can still shut it down. So
These roundabouts generally slow the traffic down through those areas, don't they?
naturally, and that's a key point.
And
Yes, sir.
that's a big, I've driven on them. I drove on one in Ireland. It was on the left-hand side of the road, talking about scary.
That takes some training.
That takes some training, but you know, I survived a number of them in Ireland, but everyone that I've seen has tended to slow traffic down, and the crashes would be less severe if there was a crash. So I get scared coming into some of these intersections, the way people don't slow, they just kind of barrel through, regardless of what the light says.
So a couple things to that point, and once again, I'm not here to sell you a roundabout, don't get me wrong, but roundabout has a lot of safety features. So you talked about the conflict points, I'll paraphrase. The intersection today that we go through at Independence has 32 conflict points. Now, some of them are more severe than others. For example, I could be going to Liberty High School from Taco Bell, and somebody decides to disregard the red light. Now, should they only be going, Chief, is that 35? You've been playing with the speed limits.
It's 25.
Oh, yeah, so you lowered that speed limit for me. Anyway, so even at 25, well, let's say they're going 35, because I can assure you not everybody obeys the speed limit. And they hit me in the driver door. Will I get hurt? Maybe. Likely. Will it be severe? Maybe. You know, I went to, I visited the IIHS, so the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety up there north of Charlottesville. I've got the good fortune of visiting twice, and I've got to witness crash test. If any of you haven't seen it, I recommend you go see it. The crash tests are interesting, but the one thing that I've beaten in my kid's head, and I will never forget, I don't remember the model of the cars, but it was a first or second generation Ford Explorer. Passenger in the rear driver's side, so the rear left is where the passenger sitting. They got the grease paint on their heads and stuff. And that Ford Explorer was impacted by, we'll call it let's call it a Ford Taurus, and the Ford Explorer impacted them. So I just got hit by a Ford Explorer. And my kid, let's say they're 15, they're sitting in the back seat behind me. There was a brown grease paint and a huge dent on the hood of that Ford Explorer from that head, you know, striking the hood of that vehicle. And it burns in your memory when you go see something like it. That's the severe T-bone side impact. So we can do that. We can have that today. The roundabout takes those conflicts from 32 to 8. And the reason is because you're coming in at an angle. So I'm not going to drive straight into it. As I approach it, I may be in a little bit of a curve because placement matters. How do you get to it? How do you take, you don't go so far back on your connected streets and start to rebuild. You can't do that. So you start to angle people into it. You've got some concrete medians that start to guide you, and the trucks can navigate this. And then as you enter it, or as you approach it, we're slowing you down with signage. Independence is 45. I mean, this is just taking a shot here, but you may reduce that with some warning signs to 25. A lot of times you see some peak efficiency in the 25 to 35 range, mile per hour, but you're going to slow the traffic down. You're going to enter it at an angle. And this car, if you think about it, so I'm going through the circle, and Councilman Stanley, you're entering. Yes, if I strike you, I'm going to strike you at much less than a 90-degree angle, right? Which changes the dynamic of the crash completely. And your speeds are a little bit lower. Now, anybody could enter it going 70, 2 o'clock in the morning, and you know, no different from somebody could blow through the light today. And so it's not going to solve all your crashes. We never could do that, unfortunately. But it definitely, there's statistics that show it reduces the crash severity.
Man, I've seen people almost come to a stop trying to figure out what to do, and sometimes they have to.
Yeah, I'll give you this last number. Now, this may not apply to this location. This is a 2013 document that was produced by a consultant engineer. And basically, what I highlighted out of this is studies have identified as much as a 65% reduction in injury crashes compared to a traffic signal, so a signal-controlled intersection like we have, and up to an 80% reduction in injury crashes compared to a two-way stop. So if you had two roads intersecting two other, and you had two stop signs. So now, would that happen here? I don't know the crash history off the top of my head in Independence. It's already a lower speed. Many of these intersections that we're talking about, they could have been a 55-mile-an-hour roadway and two intersecting streets. So that's data is all that is.
Todd, a couple quick questions. So process-wise, basically, we've got till August 1st for the next application.
For 2022.
Right.
So when you apply in even years, and then we wind up scoring, and we, being our central office folks and some others, score it through the winter, produce a draft plan. We take comments. We have a spring 6-year plan public hearing. This year was virtual. I expect next year will be in person. Typically, for our district, it's held somewhere in the Roanoke area. It has been in Christiansburg, but typically it's Roanoke, Salem area. And at those meetings, our CTB, Commonwealth Transportation Board member, who currently is Dr. Ray Smoot, they'll be there, our district engineer, a lot of VDOT staff, our secretary, Shannon Valentine, is usually there, Secretary of Transportation, and others, and they take feedback at the 6-year plan. And then from that, there may be some modification to the plan. Our CTB members have some latitude on how they decide what's in the plan. I'll go real quick, Mayor, if I can. So the S-curves, for example, back then, William Fralin was our CTB member for Salem. And the S-curves didn't score high enough that year to make the draft cut. That was a 2017 application. Don't quote me on the year. Anyway, Mr. Fralin was very familiar with the Montvale area. Blue Ridge Economic Coalition was big on the Roanoke to Lynchburg connection. 460 is, for lack of a better term, I hear say, it is our major highway. It's our #1 priority in Bedford County, bar none. So he saw that that was a beneficial project. What he did, he actually substituted that project and took out a project that scored a little better. It was in Botetourt County, on the interstate, in fact, inserted the S-curve project. He had that latitude. I think they can do that for 2 projects only. So they've got limitations on what they can do based on their judgment and the feedback they collect and what have you. But you would make your application, it would get scored, then the draft plan would come out, and you would start to see where it would fall relative to the others.
So where I'm going, I guess what I'm trying to understand is, you said we've got to pass a resolution. So, at that point, are we totally committed to going through at that point?
Glad you asked. So if you get to where you want to make an application, literally click the button, then you need to pass a resolution that basically says, and I'm paraphrasing, to support the project and call it whatever we title it, that sort of thing. If it scores, if it's adopted as part of the 6-year plan, let's use our next cycle as an example. So you make an application in August 2022, in June of 23, that project is in the 6-year plan, Commonwealth Transportation Board passes and adopts that plan. At that point, it is part of the plan. So you cannot cancel that project. What you can do, you can work with your our CTB member, to potentially cancel it. But the CTB is the only body that has the authority to change that plan once they adopt it in the given year. So it's a very, very valid question.
Yeah, we got to be pretty committed to going down that path.
Yeah, so I don't think you got to, so I don't want to speak for Mr. Warner, but obviously you're not making that decision tonight, but it is, there is staff time and developing a project and coming up with, there's a lot of work to do to get to an application, a lot of work.
So that's August of 2022,
That
right?
would be
Or-
August, I'm right on, August 2022. Yep.
Okay, all right, I was thinking August.
No, you've got time. We're gonna adopt, no, we're gonna adopt this month, our 6-year plan, and then we'll take a 5-minute breath and we're right back in it, and then we've got our programming staff in Salem. We were on a call a few weeks ago with Mary, and Wayne, and we've got what we call a project pipeline, and the whole purpose of that is to give us a sense of, Mr. and Ms. Locality, how many projects do you think you can apply for? Because we literally we've got a limit on how much support we can offer, and we want to give everybody support. But in our region, based on the population and what have you, you can submit 4 applications as a locality. That's all you can submit, which that ain't no big deal, right? Well, you take all the counties, 12 counties, and all the towns and cities that can submit, and then you take the PDCs and MPOs, and you add all them 4s up, it turns into a pretty big number, and we don't have the volume, the capacity to support that many applications. So we start early, we have conversations with the localities, the staff at the localities, and try to figure out, hey, what's on your radar, what's your priority, and then, so we start early, we're working with them, and like I said, we've been talking to Mary and Wayne, and I think that's part of this is, hey, we got our next rounds coming up, what do we want to do?
And I appreciate you coming tonight, Todd. That's one of the things, a year for us, the staff, is not a very long time.
No,
So,
yeah.
if you are even remotely interested, and I don't expect you to give us that direction tonight, if you can let us know by this August, we can start working on getting an application in next August.
Is there currently any drawing of any kind to show us what it would look like? Probably.
We have a study from Clark Nixon, which I'll be happy, you
Okay.
may not have it because it was, I think we.
Oh, yeah.
produced
Everybody
it.
have that, not make sure, if.
Make sure I'll email it to you.
Get that out
I'll
next
give you
week's
that.
package to everybody again. And then switching gears real quick on the McGee Street Bridge, where are we kind of in the timeline on that?
September 2023?
Mr. Mayor, I didn't look the schedule up on that,
Okay.
because it's in the town, I apologize.
That's all right.
I should have looked that up. but-
Well, the good news is it's going to be an improved facility, whereas we had a one-lane bridge that was 100 years old.
Probably, likely that old.
We're going to get a two-lane bridge that's not going to cost us anything because it's in state of good repair. Bad news is I think the schedule is September 2023.
Yeah, maybe, we can confirm that, but,
So we get it better, we get it for free, we just don't get it quick.
Okay.
Fast, cheap.
And then the last thing, and I'm not, I'm throwing you some curveballs here.
That's
but
all right.
Obviously, reversion's coming up. We're gonna take in some additional, area
Yes,
into
sir.
town. So and we're starting to try to do some planning, so maybe if you could kind of give us an idea at some point, give Bart or DW, or, kind of what that might mean like for some additional money coming in from VDOT. Help figure that out.
so I can give you some round numbers, Mr. Wagner, and there's some of it I don't know, but we work with DW. So as I said, you get annual payments every year for your arterial and local streets. You can look that up online, what the annual rate is, but here's where I believe we are, and it's gonna be a pretty round number. We are somewhere around the $20,000 to $22,000 per lane mile for arterials. Like I said, we can confirm that, Ms. Warner, if you want to, and get that to you. Wayne Hale's probably got it on his desk, but, and then for your local streets, on Arterial Street, an example is South Street, Blue Ridge Avenue, East Main, Independence, Longwood Extension, Forest Road. Am I missing any? I think Peak Street, yep, thank you. Peak Street is an arterial, so the primary routes, 122, 221, 43. Then everything else is your local street. Now, not every single street or alley is in the urban inventory. So the roads that we make payments for are part of the urban inventory. There are some qualification requirements for those roads. What will happen when, and let me back up, Mr. Mayor, the local streets are around 9,000 or 10,000 per lane mile.
Okay.
There's a difference. Obviously, there's a difference in maintenance requirements, if you will, because of traffic volumes or what have you. But what will happen is, like, for example, Town and Country, we'll wind up doing what's called a Form U1, and we'll use the reversion documents to guide us, and we will work with Wayne, and those get we fill out the form and or work with him to fill it out and send it to central office, and they get added to your urban inventory. And the next round, I don't know if those payments come in July. I don't know the schedule. We inspect the streets in the town of Bedford every March. And then we do a U5 and send it up, and then you get your payments. That's real high level what'll happen. They'll come into your system, we'll log them, identify them, they'll be part of the actual urban inventory, and then you'll start getting payments for them.
So, and then the other piece of that is, as we get closer and we start planning sidewalks in some of these areas, is that something that would be maybe potential for revenue sharing or some of your other?
Transportation alternatives,
Right,
revenue sharing, yeah. One of the big differences in rev share is two big differences in transportation alternatives. And I expect Wayne would pat me on the back for saying this. So the revenue sharing, the negative is it's 50-50, so the town has to put more money in, state funds. Transportation alternatives, TA, is 80-20, and it's a little different the way we split it, but it's federal dollars, which does cost more administratively. That's a fact. They come with a little more stringent requirements. But there are sources for sidewalk, and I know at least two. Crenshaw Street was one. Of course, the Burks Hill project, that's
revenue sharing.
revenue share. So you got several examples.
Right. We'll probably be talking to you hopefully on some of that stuff.
Well, I'd love to see them local.
Anybody else got any other questions? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate your comment.
Thanks much.
Any discussion or on kind of what we want to think about a timeline on when we want to? I know everybody.
I think once we get some more information on it, and I need to get some diagrams and all that. And
Okay, maybe
talk about
next
it.
meeting or the meeting. Well, next meeting we've got that public hearing, don't we?
Yeah.
So maybe the meeting after that we could have everybody kind of be ready to kind of
Sure.
have your thoughts together on that. All right.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right, and then, last thing is, closed session, so, going into closed session, need a motion to go into closed session pursuant to section 2.2, 3711A1 of the Code of Virginia of 1950 as amended to discuss personnel matters. Basically, just want to talk and update council a little bit on the search for the town attorney.
So,
Second.
All right. Roll call.
Mr. Hartwick?
Aye.
Mr. Johansson? Mr. Schoen?
Aye.
Mr. Stanley?
aye.
Mr. Haley?
Aye.
Mayor Black? Motion carries with 6 ayes.
situation, or?
Oh, I can if you want me to.
Just, did you have a report of some kind, you kind of, so basically, I asked Mark to kind of give us a report of a project that Electric's doing.
Yeah, and I can remember from the conversation, on page 73 in the capital projects of the adopted budget, we have a fund established for things that need to be done at Snowden. I mean, I'm just going to use general terms to describe that. One of which is a replacement of the roof at the hydro plant, which is specifically mentioned. The other that we've identified is the need to construct a pole barn for storage of our materials, which frankly, right now, are kept in the plant itself, which is in the floodplain, so if the plant floods, the equipment's ruined and all that. We do have 2 bids out related to the roof and the pole barn right now. I will tell you, I don't know that we're actually going to appropriate those because frankly, we're seeing how much they cost to see what we can do under the current level of funding, which is $40,000. But long-term, we're looking to put $40,000 in for the next 5 years to address several issues out of Snowden.
All right. Good enough? All right. Appreciate it. Any other, not, meeting's adjourned. Thanks.
Let's go home.
Liberty won the soccer match.
Everyone, what?
Liberty won the soccer match.
Oh, really?